The city sleeps heavy under its own silence. Street lights hum like tired ghosts, flickering over cracked sidewalks where stories end unseen. She moves through the night, carrying bags filled with food and hope, her breath fogging in the cold. Each step echoes softly, a rhythm of purpose in a world that rarely looks down. The air smells of rain and metal, but her smile breaks through like morning. Sometimes she wonders, does kindness matter if no one sees it? But maybe that's the point. Maybe the quiet acts are the loudest prayers. The streets know her footsteps now. They whisper her name in the dark. She doesn't seek thanks. She seeks faces. The hungry, the lost, the forgotten. And in their eyes she finds pieces of herself. Tender, bruised, still shining. But tonight feels different. The air carries something heavy, like a held breath waiting to break. What happens when compassion collides with power under the cover of night? The night deepens, and the city exhales smoke from its restless lungs. She moves quietly through the narrow paths, her breath steady, her focus unbroken. Behind her, unseen, footsteps echo faintly. Hesitant, cautious, like someone unsure of belonging here. The hum of a faraway train fills the space between those steps. She doesn't look back, not yet. The alley smells of rain and rust, of survival. The small acts continue, hands offering warmth where the world offers none. She wonders how many lives drift unseen in the corners of this glittering city, how many hearts still beat beneath its cold shine. The unseen man watches her kneel, and something inside him fractures. The weight of a life built too high above the ground. Rain starts again, soft at first, then harder, drumming against tin and asphalt like a restless heartbeat. She pulls her hood tighter, hunching down to shield the food from the storm. The man steps closer now, slow and unsure, each drop tracing the lines of his face like memory. For a moment, their worlds nearly touch. The warmth of her compassion against the cold steel of his guilt, but she doesn't see him, not yet. Lightning flashes briefly, revealing his features in full, then vanishing as quickly as it came. In that blink, the city looks like it's holding its breath. How does a man this powerful find himself hiding in the shadows of those he once ignored? The storm fades, leaving the city washed but unchanged. She sits on a crate, wiping rain from her gloves, unaware of the eyes that have followed her every step. The man watches as she hums quietly to herself, a song too soft for the wind to steal. There's peace in her stillness, something he hasn't felt in years. He remembers boardrooms, screens, applause, and how empty they all sounded. In the silence of this alley, he feels something truer than his fortune ever gave him. When she stands to leave, her reflection glows in a puddle like a moving halo. The camera across the street blinks again, recording it all. One truth hidden in 1,000 pixels of gray. The night finally breaks. Dawn's faint glow begins to push through the skyline, tinting the clouds in quiet pink. She leaves the alley, her steps slower now, her hands empty but her heart full. Behind her, the man kneels where she once stood. He doesn't speak, doesn't move. The world that once bowed before his money now feels impossibly distant. He looks down at the leftover food. Still warm, and it hits him. The weight of everything he's ignored. The city hums awake, blind to the moment unfolding in its shadows. Somewhere above, the hidden camera captures him kneeling, head bowed, not as a billionaire, but as a man stripped bare before his own humanity. Morning comes softly, but guilt wakes loud. He hasn't slept. The alley replays in his mind. Her hands, her calm, her quiet grace. For years he's lived above the clouds, yet now he feels the weight of the ground pressing on. He sits in his penthouse, walls made of glass, skyline painted in gold, but inside it's hollow. The world knows him as a man of vision, a builder of towers, but he can't stop seeing her feeding strangers in the dark. Who was she? Why did her kindness feel like a mirror he didn't ask to face? He tells himself it was just chance. But something deeper whispers otherwise. Sometimes the smallest act exposes the biggest truth. You can have everything and still be starving for meaning. He rewinds the footage again. The hidden camera video that surfaced from a store's security feed. Each second replays like confession. There she is, the woman in the green coat, feeding the homeless under rain. He leans closer, breath shallow. The world doesn't know who she is, not yet. But he does. A buried memory stirs. Her brother once worked for him. A man whose name he had long erased from memory until this moment. The guilt burns deeper, curling into his chest. How many lives had he crushed beneath ambition? Now one of them stands like a light in his darkness. Maybe fate doesn't whisper. It shouts, only when we're finally quiet enough to hear. By noon, the footage leaks online. Someone posts it under the title, "The Kind Woman of Atlanta." Within hours, it floods every screen. Shares, comments, praise. The city that once ignored its poor suddenly feels something like empathy, though filtered through pixels and likes. He watches the chaos grow, reporters tracing every frame. The irony cuts deep. For her, it was never performance. For the world, it's spectacle. He scrolls through endless noise, then shuts it off. Behind every viral act, there's a human heart, one that beats quietly, unseen. And for the first time, he doesn't want to be the story. He wants to understand a woman who was. Evening again, he can't stay away. He drives through the same streets, headlights carving through mist. The city looks different now. Every shadow seems alive with meaning. He parks near the alley where it all began, steps out, and walks toward the dim glow of the streetlight. She's there again, alone. Her movements calm, practiced. He watches silently, afraid to break the moment. Every act she performs feels deliberate, sacred. When she finally turns and sees him, their eyes meet. No words, just rain beginning again, soft as truth. She finally speaks first, her voice low, steady, unshaken. "You shouldn't be here." He says nothing, only watches her continue. She's not angry, she's tired. Tired of pity, dressed as help. He kneels beside her, not from pride or shame, but something deeper, understanding. In that small act, something unseen shifts. Two worlds collide without violence, only truth. The camera across the street catches the moment again. The billionaire kneeling, the woman feeding the forgotten. The world will soon call it redemption, but for them, it's simply human. By morning, the video floods the world. Screens glow in every home, every phone, every corner cafe. Billionaire kneels beside homeless woman. The headline spreads faster than truth. She wakes to the sound of her own name whispered by strangers, her image replayed in slow motion, her quiet kindness dissected by talk shows and news anchors. The world that once ignored the hungry now devours her story for breakfast. She doesn't understand how something so small, one act of love in the dark, has become spectacle. But maybe that's what truth does when it escapes silence. It unsettles the comfortable and comforts the unseen. Outside, the city buzzes louder than ever. Reporters crowd the streets, searching for her, shouting her name like she's a myth to be captured. She hides behind her hood, slipping through the alley she once ruled in peace. Every camera feels like an invasion. Every compliment feels like theft. She fed the hungry to heal, not to be seen. Fame tastes bitter when it's born from something sacred. Somewhere downtown he watches too, his face on every screen, his name dragged through both praise and ridicule. The story isn't theirs anymore. The world owns it now. He watches it unfold from his office, unable to escape his own reflection in the screens. Some call him a savior, others a fraud. But he knows the truth. It wasn't him who changed anything. It was her, the woman who did good when no one was watching. He replays the moment again and again, realizing that kneeling wasn't an act of charity, it was surrender. For the first time, he sees what real power looks like, and it doesn't wear a suit. Maybe redemption isn't public. Maybe it happens quietly, in the corners where no one's recording. When he finally finds her again, she's back where it started. Same alley, same quiet night. She's not angry, just tired of noise. He stands a few feet away, the distance between them heavier than any fortune. "You didn't ask for this," he says softly. She shakes her head. Neither did they. She points to the sleeping figures nearby. The people still forgotten despite the fame swirling above them. He understands then. Kindness isn't news, it's responsibility. For the first time, his voice cracks. "Help me do it right," he whispers. She doesn't answer with words, only a slow nod before returning to her work. The next day, the world watches again. But this time, the cameras show something different. Not a billionaire kneeling, not a viral saint, but two people working side by side, serving food beneath a bridge. The noise fades for a moment, replaced by quiet awe. No headlines, no performance, just humanity, unfiltered. For her, it's just another night. For him, it's the first time in years he's felt peace. Maybe that's the hidden beauty of compassion. It asks for nothing, yet changes everything. The days that follow feel strangely quiet. The city moves on, but their moment lingers like a ghost in the headlines. He keeps returning to the alley, sometimes with food, sometimes just to watch. She doesn't ask why. She already knows. There is something unspoken between them, something old. Each time he looks at her, memories flicker. A mechanic in his early years, laughing, proud, always speaking of his little sister. That name, her brother's name, returns like a forgotten prayer. The truth hits him hard, sudden, and heavy. The man he once fired years ago had vanished soon after. He never knew where he ended up, until now. He tells her everything, how he once owned the repair company her brother worked for, how greed drove him to cut corners, how layoffs destroyed lives he never saw again. She stands still, absorbing the confession like a slow storm. He expects anger, maybe tears, but she only breathes. "You knew him?" she asks, her voice soft, almost breaking. He nods, his eyes wet. "He was good, better than me." The alley feels smaller now, filled with memory instead of noise. She turns away, face trembling between rage and mercy. Sometimes forgiveness isn't given. It's discovered quietly in the heart that refuses to hate. She walks away, needing air, needing space. The rain hides her tears, but not her shaking hands. Every memory of her brother floods back. The laughter. The day he disappeared. The unanswered questions. And now, standing behind her, the man tied to it all. Yet something in his voice, the tremor of remorse, stops her from hating him completely. Maybe pain doesn't end with revenge. Maybe it softens through understanding. She closes her eyes and whispers, "You can't fix the past, but you can feed the living." When she opens them again, he's still there, head bowed, waiting for her to decide what forgiveness looks like. When she finally returns, dawn is breaking again. He's still there, sitting on the curb, waiting without pride, without words. She offers him a cup of coffee from her thermos, the same way she feeds everyone else. That single gesture feels heavier than apology. They drink in silence, the city slowly waking around them. The distance between guilt and grace shortens. For the first time, they speak not as a billionaire and a stranger, but as two souls connected by loss. She doesn't promise to forgive him. He doesn't ask her to, but both understand that change begins right here, in the quiet between them. He tells her his plan, to use his wealth not for show, but to rebuild the streets she walks, the shelters she serves. She listens quietly, arms folded, unsure whether to believe. Yet, something in his eyes convinces her. This isn't a promise, it's repentance. "Don't build it for me," she says. "Build it for them." He nods. The wind picks up, rustling plastic bags down the street like small ghosts. Together they look toward the skyline. One seeing what's broken, the other imagining what could be whole again. The past cannot be erased, but the future can be rewritten, one act at a time. Change never comes quietly. It starts with whispers, then resistance. The news returns, hungry again, reporters praising, critics tearing down, everyone wanting a piece of the story. But she refuses to speak. She keeps feeding, walking the same alleys, same faces, same mission. Only now people follow her, some out of curiosity, others out of conviction. He funds quietly from the background, his name no longer attached. The world expects grand gestures. She teaches them that compassion doesn't need spectacle. Yet, beneath the calm tension brews. Some say her humility shames the powerful. Others say his silence hides guilt. Between truth and perception, they stand alone, holding fast to what's real. She starts noticing new faces, businessmen, influencers, politicians, all showing up with cameras in hand. They bring food, too, but also microphones. They want the story more than the service. She watches, silent, as empathy turns to performance. When one man asks for a selfie beside her, she turns away, shaking her head. "If you need proof, it's not kindness," she murmurs. Somewhere, he's watching the same scene unfold, feeling his own world's hypocrisy reflected back. He once believed image was power. Now he sees truth doesn't trend. It simply endures. That night, he visits her again. The alley is quiet, washed clean by rain. "I've turned it into a show," he admits. She doesn't reply immediately, only keeps setting out plates. Then, "Stop giving them something to sell," she finally says. He nods, understanding that her revolution is quiet. No PR, no spotlight, just presence. He feels both humbled and afraid. She doesn't need him to lead, she needs him to listen. It's the first time in his life he finds peace in following. The following week, she invites him to speak. Not to the cameras, but to the people he once overlooked. The shelter is small, barely lit. The air thick with the scent of soup and hope. He steps forward, nervous, and begins to talk. Not about wealth, but about loss, mistakes, and rebuilding from honesty. No one applauds. They just listen. And that's enough. When he finishes, she nods softly. In that nod lives every word she doesn't say. This is how redemption begins, not in power, but in the quiet acceptance of truth. Later that night, when everyone leaves, they stand together outside the shelter. The air is cool, stars faint above the city haze. "You didn't have to stay," she says quietly. "I did," he replies. "I needed to remember what matters." She smiles faintly, not with triumph but peace. They look at the skyline, still glittering, still indifferent. But tonight, it feels less cruel. Redemption, she realizes, isn't about erasing pain. It's about facing it and choosing to love anyway. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not wealth, not fame. Just two hearts learning to begin again. Months pass. What began as a chance encounter becomes a movement not born from speeches or cameras, but from quiet work. Together they start something new, a place where no one is turned away. The shelter grows from a single room to a full building. Its doors open every night. He invests without fame. She leads without pride. The world barely notices, but the streets do. Hope moves quietly, like dawn sneaking over the horizon. She watches the faces arrive, cold, hungry, frightened, and she recognizes herself in all of them. He watches too, finally seeing wealth for what it truly means. Not numbers, but hands that serve. The nights inside the shelter hum with quiet life. Laughter. Clinking dishes, gentle snores. She walks through the rows of cots, handing out blankets, whispering goodnight. He's there too, sweeping floors, learning the rhythm of humility. Sometimes their eyes meet across the room. No words needed. This is what they built. Not a monument, but a mirror for everyone who forgot kindness could look like this. Outside, rain falls again, tapping on the roof like a blessing. For the first time, neither of them feels alone. Word spreads, slowly but steadily. Volunteers come not for fame, but for purpose. The walls fill with murals painted by those who once slept beneath bridges. She listens as stories unfold. Addiction, loss, survival. Every tale adds color to the walls, turning pain into art. He moves among them, no longer distant, learning every name, every smile. Redemption doesn't arrive as applause. It arrives as gratitude whispered from those who never thought they'd be seen again. And as she watches him laugh with a man once invisible to the world, she realizes this is what forgiveness looks like when it finally breathes. One evening, a reporter finds them. The world has begun to remember. Cameras return, flashing, asking questions. But this time, she doesn't hide. "This isn't my story," she says. "It's ours." He stands beside her, saying nothing, content to let her voice lead. For the first time, he doesn't feel the need to explain or control. She has become what he never was, a leader who serves. The interviewer looks surprised. "Why do you still come here every night?" She smiles softly. "Because kindness isn't a season, it's a choice." The world finally listens. Later that night, after the cameras leave, they sit on the shelter steps watching the rain. The neon lights of the city shimmer across puddles. "Do you ever think it'll be enough?" he asks quietly. She shakes her head. "No, but that's why we keep going." He smiles, a quiet acceptance settling in. They sit in silence, listening to the rain play its soft rhythm on the roof. The city hums, alive and imperfect. But tonight, it feels a little less cold. For two souls once lost on opposite ends of the world, this moment, this stillness, is everything they were searching for. Time softens even the hardest truths. Months pass and the shelter becomes more than a refuge. It becomes a heartbeat for the city. People come not to take pictures, but to serve. The walls breathe with laughter, hope, and stories painted in color and faith. She moves through the rooms each night like light itself, steady and calm. He walks beside her, quieter now, content with the background. Together they've built something not meant to be famous, but to endure. Sometimes she catches him smiling at the simplest things, a child sharing food, a stranger saying thank you. And she realizes, redemption isn't a moment. It's a lifetime of choosing to care. The world never fully forgets them. Journalists still visit, curious about the billionaire who vanished from headlines only to reappear among the forgotten. Yet, every story they write misses the truth. It was never about him. One evening, she finds him sitting by the mural of her brother, staring at the painted smile. "Be proud," she says softly. He looks up, eyes misty, and replies, "He already is." They sit there for a while. No cameras, no noise, just two lives stitched together by loss and purpose. Sometimes the deepest connections aren't born in love, but in the promise to heal what the world once broke. Years later, the foundation grows beyond the city. New shelters rise in places they've never been, each carrying the same name, the night table. Volunteers wear small pins shaped like candles, a tribute to the night that started it all. She still walks the streets sometimes, alone, her coat frayed, but familiar. He's older now, slower, but his eyes are lighter, unburdened. Their paths don't need cameras or crowds anymore. What they built speaks for them, a living legacy whispered in every meal served, every hand held. Compassion, it seems, can outlive the noise. One evening, she finds him sitting on the shelter steps, watching the sunset over the skyline. "Do you ever miss it?" she asks. "The boardrooms, the fame, the applause." He laughs softly. "Sometimes. But then, I think about that first night. About you in the rain." She smiles. "We were strangers then." He shakes his head. "Not really. We were just waiting to meet." The sky burns orange and gold, reflecting off wet pavement. The city hums beneath them, alive with noise, but for a moment it's just them. Two souls who learned that purpose, not power, is what leaves a mark. The story ends where it began, with the camera. Only this time it's different. Detective Alvarez, who once reviewed that first grainy clip, sits at her desk years later, watching the footage again. "Funny," she whispers, "how one act can change everything." She pauses on the frame of the billionaire kneeling beside the woman in the rain. But now she knows the truth. It was never about the billionaire or the camera. It was about the quiet power of goodness seen when no one was supposed to be watching. And somewhere, under another midnight sky, someone new begins their own quiet act of kindness, inspired by the ones who dared to care first.